When Donald Trump comes to Britain this week, he won't go to Newcastle. He won't be given the freedom of the city, and he certainly won't greet an adoring crowd of 20,000 people like this.
Away the lads. I'm very grateful to be a Geordie now.
So it was that Jimmy Carter won the hearts of Tyneside in 1977, outside Newcastle Civic Centre. This is how it used to be, British crowds cheering American presidents, not just because they were more popular in the past, but also because their visits were more rare. The first to come was Woodrow Wilson in 1918. But it wasn't until the end of another World War, 27 years later, that a US president once again graced our shores.
Welcome to my country, Mr. President, is the royal greeting. On the deck of the British cruiser, a British tribute to President Truman's great leadership.
If you didn't catch a glimpse of Mr. Truman in Plymouth Harbour in 1945, it would be another 14 years before another president came along in 1959.
President Eisenhower arrives in London, the second stop on his momentous tour of the Western Allies capitals. Earlier in Bonn,
and he was given a unique honour, one that's not been offered to Mr. Trump.
Next day, Queen Elizabeth and the royal family are the president's hosts at Balmoral Castle in the Scottish Highlands.
One thing President Eisenhower did have in common with Mr. Trump is that he owned property in Scotland. Not a golf course, but an apartment in a castle that had been given for his war service, and he spent a few days there on holiday. But such privacy was rare for his successor, John F. Kennedy, and his wife, who came in 1961.
Something not even the cabinet could have planned is the 500,000 people lining the route from London Airport to the West End just to cheer a hello to Jack and Jackie.
Note that, 500,000 people. Inevitably, such popularity could not last. President Nixon came in 1969 and visited the Prime Minister, Harold Wilson, at Chequers.
There had been little indication of threatened disturbances from anti-Nixon campaigners. American and British security men had clamped a tight ring around America's first citizen.
Lyndon Johnson never made it here, nor did Gerald Ford. Ronald Reagan came a couple of times and, unlike Mr. Trump, got to stay at Windsor Castle and go for a ride with the Queen. Bill Clinton came 9 times in office and, unlike Donald Trump, he even got to attend a cabinet meeting, one of Tony Blair's first, in 1997.
I'm not going to give any advice. I'm going to sit here and take it as long as they'll let me do it.
Of course, this trip by Mr. Trump is not a state visit. There've actually only been 2, for George W. Bush in 2003 and then Barack Obama in 2011, when David Cameron called on his skills as a chef.
We've just been having a barbecue in the gardens of number 10 Downing Street. It was a great event. It was also probably the first time in history, as we stood behind that barbecue, that I can say a British Prime Minister has given an American president a bit of a grilling.
Unlike Mr. Trump, President Obama was given the rare privilege of addressing both Houses of Parliament in Westminster Hall.
I am told that the last 3 speakers here have been the Pope, Her Majesty the Queen, and Nelson Mandela, which is either a very high bar or the beginning of a very funny joke.
Donald Trump's visit will be more low-key and less public than his predecessors to avoid protests and diplomatic rows. But even with popular presidents, there are always risks. In 1977, President Carter decided to bid farewell to the Queen Mother by kissing her full on the lips, something that apparently had not happened since the King died in 1952. I took a step back, she recalled later. Not quite far enough.